Hey guys, we are here today with Noah Reed from the University of Arkansas. And so what do you hope to find out of your research?
And it's just a way to help producers in the field instead of just on the scientific side, but how producers can really use it. You know, this crop rotation, if a precision planter becomes available, you know, using a planter that makes it more easier to plant and drill soybeans with rice. And then also just using these fall residuals to help reduce the herbicide resistance that we have in the soil seed bank of Italian ryegrass. So I actually grew up in Cabot, Arkansas, central Arkansas, and then moved over in the eastern part of the state and went to the Arkansas State University, graduated from there in 2020 with my plant and soil science degree with an emphasis of agronomy. Then I started working for Dr. Tommy Butts in Lone Oak, and eventually he led me to want to go back to school, and so I ended up here working on my master's degree at the University of Arkansas.
So can you tell us a little bit about your research? What is it, and what are some of your methods that you use?
So I've had a couple different things that I've looked at. One thing is the use of fall residuals for Italian ryegrass control before soybeans. So instead of, you know, a burn down option in the springtime, most people will just burn down their weeds and then go straight into planting soybeans. Well, this is using a residual in the fall, spraying it, and just letting that residual control over the course of the spring and into the soybean crop. I've looked at a little bit of that, and then some nozzle coverage studies looking at some different T-jet nozzles of AIXR, XR, some TTIs, and some dual fan to single fans, looking just these coverage of these herbicides and some of these efficacy problems we're facing in the field. And then also just some crop rotations between rice and soybean, looking at some drill row width spacing effects, you know, making it easier for producers to switch from a rice crop to a soybean crop for weed control.
For our listeners who maybe don't know what that is, can you explain that a little more?
These burn down options just aren't getting a good control. And it's always better, I would say, for farmers to spray soil than it is to spray the weeds. So using this fall residual, you're just getting ahead of the soybean a lot earlier, making it easier to control. Zidua SC was a very good control option. Anthem Flex and Dual, we saw very good control with those, holding up 166 days after application into the springtime. We're seeing very good residual control with that for Italian ryegrass. And then just some coverage aspects. We use some coverage cards to see some of this efficacy and running it through a program to see the percent coverage that we're having with some of these top nozzles that are used in the state. And AIXR and XRs had the greatest percent of coverage, but some of these herbicides, you know, you have to use a larger droplet size to spray, and so producers are just getting to see that effect of that. You're getting that coverage percentage decrease because of these larger droplet sizes that these labels have for drift opportunities, these TTIs and stuff.
And so once you get your research findings, how does that information get to where it needs to go? So
we actually have a Weeds Are Wild podcast, and I was on that last season, which I talked about some rice research, but it's one good way that we get promote some of our findings. Some other is some research articles. We write research articles every year, and you can actually find, this year I'm writing a soybean summary over the use of fall residuals in Italian ryegrass, so you can find that there. And then a lot of conferences. We go to a lot of conferences, whether it's Southern Weed Science Society or ACPA, which is our local Arkansas Crop Protection Association. And a lot of those conferences, you can just really get to see that producers can come and they get to see some of this research that we are conducting.
And so at this point in your research, because you still have a way to go, but what have been some of your biggest findings so far?
With the 15-inch drill spacing, using that for, you know, is pretty common for soybeans, but in rice it's not. Just showing that the weed control aspect for a rice, it's just making it very difficult to work to make that crop rotation easier. And then on the coverage standpoint, like I said, with the better coverage nozzles, we can't spray those because of the drift aspect of some of the herbicides that we have to use. So it's just trying to find that balance of the type of nozzles we can use for the type of herbicides, and just to get good coverage on these weeds that we need to. And then also just the residual controls is a very good option, I think. We've seen other research has found that other winter weeds we've been effectively control with some fall residuals, and I think Italian ryegrass and using it and getting that application out in the fall before your soybeans could be a very good option instead of just a burn down option in the spring.
And so what would you say if anyone else were looking to join the program, what would you say to them?
So for me, my favorite part is just the field research, actually being out there in the field. We do a lot of research in just different crops. I've worked in rice, soybeans, peanuts, cotton, a little bit of other stuff here
Yeah.
and there, and you're just getting the aspect of a bunch of different crops. And I think the field research is the big aspect that I really enjoy.
And kind of circling back to, you grew up on a cattle farm and you didn't do row crops. So can you kind of explain maybe a little bit about that transition a little more, like the difference that you see, the importance?
I think the more you get into weed science and just row crops itself, it's really narrowed down. You can have to pick out the little things that you didn't realize. Most people look at it just large-scale farm, but there's a lot of little stuff, a lot of weeds you have to know to effectively control in a soybean crop and other crops. And so it's a larger scale, but it's more nitpicky on the little stuff that you have to know, I would say.
So today we've been here with Noah Reed from the University of Arkansas. Noah, thanks so much for being here with us today. We've really enjoyed having you on this podcast with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Arkansas Soybean Promotion Board's Soybean Podcast. We hope you'll follow us on Twitter at Arkansas Soybeans and even more resources at themiraclebean.com.